Hello, Substack fans, friends, subscribers. Have a really interesting guest today, David Leskowitz from Massachusetts, right? Yeah.
That's right. Good to be here, Hugh.
Well, yeah, welcome. It's really wonderful to have you. And I know David a little bit through the world of Centaur astrology, and we've been communicating over a couple of years at least, maybe 3 or 4 now, off and on, and participated also, both of us, in an interesting project to create an anthology, a book with various contributors, a chapter each on the astrology and astronomy to a certain extent, mythology, psychology of the centaurs from Greek mythology. You may be familiar with Chiron. So I feel that even though I am a very keen student and sometimes write about the centaurs right here on Substack, actually, but I feel that David, you are a much more advanced and deeper student and have you're way down the path, and I have so much to learn from you. And I love the way that you also you practice. You're very devout Tibetan Buddhist, and you also practice music, and you offer many resources around your knowledge. Astromagic is a subcategory that you're interested in, which fascinates me as well. So let's begin the begin.
Well,
So
thank
just
you.
in
Thank
an
you so much.
experience, yeah, an experiential kind of in the moment way, um, we've come together with our etheric subtle bodies on the Zoom screen, and likewise sharing with all of you out there in Substack land a certain energetic space. So in a sense, we are in person meeting. So when you come to this meeting in this medium, what are you experiencing right now, and what comes into your field of awareness when you think of the centaurs, astrology, um, the bigger picture of how all this fits in with evolution, where we're at, humanity? There's a lot going on politically, environmentally, and I'm really interested in how you sort of bring your knowledge and practice into an interface, with practical everyday life, socially, um, in relationship, and so on. So anything at all that comes up from your field of experience that you'd like to share.
Well, I'll start from the beginning. Thank you so much. That was quite a comprehensive introduction to who I am professionally and personally and spiritually. And to start from this kind of felt sense that you mentioned in this etheric space, I love that premise. Both of us do work that sort of is focused in a sense of attunement, and that's a shared way into working with other people in these sort of more etheric domains that we have specialized in. Although yours might be a more embodied and maybe more interpersonal method, but so in this moment, I'm sitting looking out this window into a wintry landscape, and then I'm looking into your window, and we're also looking into each other's sort of simulacrum of our eyes and making some sort of eye contact. But fortunately, we have a sense of rapport and we know each other. So we can tune into this shared intention here. And we both have, and I will pause and defer back to you that while I may be propping myself up as some sort of expert on the centaurs, I defer very much to your many more decades of working with the centaurs, since maybe even before I was born or before I was certainly conscious of astrology, as I know that you're a long-term, at least discussant of centaur issues. So I'm happy to be in the convo with you. Part of our work as astrologers is always about kind of this lineage that has carried us back stargazing throughout, of course, millennia, and more recently with modern cosmology and modern astrology. computers and telescopes and everything, we have this knowledge brought together through all of these methods of the centaurs and outer planets, discovering asteroids from just the last 225 some odd years with asteroids. And so, well, all of this brings us together to this feeling of that we are sitting in the same solar system on the same planet under the same astral influences right now, right?
Yes.
So that's
Right,
one of
right.
the reasons I like astrology, is just to figure out the context that we're all operating under together.
Yeah, I love that. That I always feel that when I'm with a group online or on site or a client or with anyone actually, it is kind of a magical moment because as you were saying, it's we're together in the same space. In this case, it's the Zoom space at the same moment, and for a similar reason, to communicate or to work on a question or a project. So it just provides an environment. It kind of prompts an environment that is conducive to something amazing happening, some kind of consciousness or communication or discovery maybe, or an experience that is a gestalt, in the moment. Kind of, there's a purpose in the moment. So, David, maybe for those watchers, viewers, listeners who either are not familiar much with astrology or may have, some previous ideas about it, or even astrologers who are not yet working with the centaurs, could you just give a short sort of logistical explanation of what the heck are they and where are they located and
Great.
yeah, something like that?
Sure. So the centaurs have been designated as such because they are bridging species of small planet that operates between the spheres of our kind of local environment in space and the well beyond. And because they are bridgers of these very slow planets and much quicker planets, as so happens when we're talking about closer planets and farther away planets, that they're in the middle. And so this middleness, this intermediating half this, half that, was conducive to the poetic mind of the astronomers to think of them as centaurs. And this allowed the mythological element to enter between the Olympian gods, essentially, of the inner planetary sphere, and maybe the Titans and beyond in the outer sphere. So it's actually very perfectly calibrated to our astrological imagination. And I'm sure you can offer us a lot on that, Hugh, because you followed that story very closely. But as for the audience who may not be astrologers, this is why it's such a rich conversation topic, because we have these planets that have only been discovered since the mid 70s, so very contemporary, and in the recent period, many more in the last decades. So we have like an ultra modern family of planets
Hmm.
that happen to align with very, to me, really just fascinating archetypes that inspire me to work with them. It's not that I grew up really fascinated with centaurs and stories or something, although you can trace them back and find them in Narnia, etc., right? But it was more pragmatic, that as a fledgling astrologer who is trying to ascertain why certain interesting things happened to particular people at certain times of growth and breakthrough, which is sort of my focus interpretively, that it they showed themselves very clearly that they were the ones operating to bring these experiences about.
Hmm. So, a question that I've always had, and I still have, even though I've sort of found some answers, I guess, to keep me calm, but it's still there under the surface. And I'm sure
Mm.
people who are not familiar with astrology have this question: how can a rock, basically
Yeah.
up in the sky, way over there, sometimes that we don't even see with the naked eye, um, how can it have an influence over affairs on the earth, whether it's internally, psychologically, spiritually, or politically, socially.
Absolutely.
What is there? Are they like beings, these
Well,
planets
this is
and Centaur?
mystery. Sure, I don't know, first of all. I don't think anybody knows. And I think when we work with them in this way, we're opening ourselves, taking a leap of faith into the sense that something mysterious could be happening, not, in my point of view, to establish some causation or, requirement that our fate unfold in a certain way because of some celestial mechanics. There's all kinds of wonderful questions this opens up that I'm really definitely a beginner at even looking at. But there's always the question of what do we call it? The way that things actually, the mechanism of action, right? That,
Yeah.
as for science, often things are understood to work without actually understanding the why or wherefore. And it's not, again, not really my emphasis, but to wonder about this is to allow the, again, at the poetic or imaginal level, for these named trackable entities in the sky to, yes, be inhabited by beings in the same way that you and I are inhabited beings, that we exist physically and spiritually. So if that's helpful for someone, it can allow the game to progress in that way and we can be more playful and interactive.
Yes.
But I don't think you have to have that, starting point, prior understanding of living beings inhabiting planetary bodies. But for me, that just kind of makes sense to take that as a jumping off point. You could definitely just look at the data and track a certain kind of real, hard-nosed kind of, the markets or the weather, things that are definitely real to an objective reality. And there are a lot of astrologers who enjoy coming to some sort of understanding that does, I think, situate them in the same way in a
Yeah.
universe that is not totally
Hmm.
empty but has something meaningful happening.
Hmm.
And for me, I mean, that's why astrology is astrology and not astronomy, right? So there's no pressure to become an astrologer in this world. We choose to do so because we want to open to this sense of interaction with the
Hmm.
cosmos, right?
Yes. Well, when you mentioned the imaginal realm, I thought, well, regardless of what the mechanism is, as far as energies and relationships of the planets and the Earth, just having a beautiful story and the beautiful sky at night. If we go into an area which doesn't have a lot of city lights, we look up, it's amazing. All the constellations, all the myths and the stories from all around the world, the Chinese, the Arabs, and the Greeks, of course. Um, just that alone is a benefit to be able to let go and take a leap of faith in the imagination and allow the geometry of the sky, which is like a music, the music of the spheres, they used to call it, to entertain us or to inform us, to allow us to get in touch with our own inner sage, perhaps, a deeper part of ourselves. However, on the other hand, if in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, I think you're a little bit familiar with that, Master DK and so on, as well as a human being having a personality, threefold personality, physical body, astral, emotional, and mental, and a soul. Uh, Likewise, nations apparently have souls and personalities as well. So my question to you and me as well, let's say our sun, which is the center of our solar system, it has a certain purpose within the galaxy.
Mm.
There's always a bigger picture, right? Like those Russian dolls that fit into each other. And so our solar essence has its own purpose in the galaxy, in the universe. And is it possible that each one of the planets, there's a certain number, big ones, and then a whole scad of little asteroids and trans-Neptunian objects? We haven't even counted them all yet, but is it possible that each one of those bodies represents a little piece of the signature or the identity of our sun, and
Wow.
therefore that they're evolving along and helping our sun evolve, and vice versa.
That's a very helpful framework. I love to imagine that. Thank you. Yes, if there's any spiritual radiance coming from the sun, which I think most people can intuit, if not fully open to that, that is what could be animating every particle within our solar system.
Mm,
And our solar system is so much more vast than we knew of growing up in both of our generations, even. And so the incredible, minute, and intricate arrangement of all of these, maybe chaotically or maybe intentionally at some point, who knows? Um, the idea that there's something orchestrated in this, to me, as you're saying, with the rhythm and music of the spheres being very profound. And so that if we imagine each of those to be conscious and having their own intentional reality, whether they have any thought of working with the people who live on planet Earth or they're working with their own realms and their own dimensions. To me, this is almost like, since you brought up the planes or the bodies, the
right,
sevenfoldness of the traditional reality
right.
vibrates through so many layers,
Mhm.
but perhaps there's n number of layers, and that these are all mediated or somehow related by each of the bodies in our solar system. But that could be totally fantasy, because someone could say these are all just dust that broke up from some collision of, some protoplanet, and both could be true, because this sort of imaginal and mystery of astrology, we relate to what's happening right now on our planet. And at this point, this is the arrangement of what we're conscious of anyway. And so the idea that our experience, however brief it is on this planet, is mediated by potentially this radiation of solar, galactic, transmuted through the arrangement that is circling around us or elliptically
Mhm.
orbiting around us, is it's just very intriguing and almost endearing for me that I want to relate to the cosmos like that.
Yes, yeah. It seems that there's like a dual process on our planet right now with our species, the human species. Like one is um, falling apart, crumbling, um, and the other is coming together sort of at the same time. So while the traditional institutions, the church and family are dissolving as far as the impact that they have upon individuals and society, our our governments, our economic system could be on the verge of a breakdown. The environment, of course, there are a lot of simultaneous catastrophes cascading together. Um, at the same time, more and more people seem to be tuning into a reality that's always been there and always will be, probably, of unity, that we're all one. Um, Not only the human beings, wherever we might live, whatever race, religion, and so on, but with nature, with the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the earth itself, Gaia, and that oneness could also extend to the solar system. It just depends on our ability to imagine, to take that leap of faith with our mind and our spirit and our heart. The heart knows things that the mind will never understand. That famous quote from the Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince. So the coherence, that there's a whole sort of vanguard of people studying the toroidal magnetic fields of the heart, and also that our planet also has one apparently. So if that exists, if there is a kind of corollary or parallel on the planetary level, the solar level, the galactic level, the individual human being, even the body, right down to the somatic signature, it sounds like it's a belief, at least, or a system that could be very available for us to experience that coherence and unity within ourselves if we're open to it, if we have some little understanding of it, even. And maybe the stars or the planets are messengers that can teach us how to link in with that coherent field.
That's right. I think even a superficial understanding of astrology allows people to share this awareness of a global understanding. Yeah, that we're all under the same influences of an influence being an astrological term for the, I think the breath of the spiritual energies coming from these cosmic bodies. So right, all levels of astrology can tune us into that, and all not levels, but also
Mm-hmm.
all forms, all different cultural manifestations of star worship and star study can bring people into that. So that maybe this, of course, the split that happened between astronomy and astrology with the Enlightenment, so called, and all of that had tore us away from this heart sense of knowing that symbolism or that the meaningfulness occurs in this reality, and that it's not all a zero sum game of I don't actually know what the opposite would be. Um, the presence of also when we talk about centaurs, we're then bridging back into this archetype of the mentor or the helpful figure that is here out of some kind of compassionate desire to help, and that is in itself maybe a unique archetype among, you could find it maybe with Jupiter or Saturn depending on your understanding, etc. Every planet could be considered a teacher, but that Chiron himself, his reason for working with humanity was to be an educator and the way shower. So Chiron being the leader of this new pack of planets indicates that just in the last 50 years we have a new realm really of assistance that maybe we weren't consciously tuning into in the same way.
Exactly. Well, like the planets, they were always there, well, relatively always. And Chiron certainly was up where it is now for centuries, thousands of years before it was discovered, which was only in 1977. And so, as you say, it's not even quite 50 years. Next year will be the Chiron will have its first
Correct.
anniversary, I suppose, first full round. So the fact that a planet becomes visible, the astronomers, they locate it, and in this case, they've named it really appropriately, this particular body, which has specific erratic or elliptical orbits, which seem to align with the story of Chiron in Greek mythology. So once we're aware of it, then the psychological realities and potential of that body or that planet, as you call it, or centaur, can start to affect us. Right? Before we're aware of it, it's just sort of there subliminally. But once we're aware of it, it goes from the unconscious into the conscious mind. Boom, we can start to work with the faculties and the powers of Chiron and Chariklo and Nessus, Bolus. Yeah, these amazing bodies.
It's a great line of inquiry whether we must be conscious of the planet to work with them. Yeah, that was of course the premise that Dane Rudhyar, I believe, put
Yeah.
forward, that with the discovery of the outer planets that we took advantage of the revolutionary powers of Uranus and Pluto, for example. And I don't really disagree, but then it's so easy to look back at a time when people didn't know about the planet and oops, they were still beholden to that rhythm in a general sense of maybe the Pluto return of the empires still designating their fall, or things like that. So I'm on the fence on that one, or it's
Yeah.
both in different ways. But of course, that we are the generation that is first conscious of the machinations of these planets, and I call them planets just because, in the sense of planetes as wandering stars,
Yes.
we don't see them, and they're too small to be a planet for various reasons. I like to distinguish them from the asteroids. Basically, is why I designate them. Really, they're minor planets, or the
Right.
asteroids generally just are much smaller and orbit much closer to the sun, and so with their very particular function of bridging the outer to the inner. The centaurs really are a class of themselves, with some overlap between the trans-Neptunians, Kuiper Belt objects, and some, like my very favorite centaur minor planet Okiroe, who's the
Yes.
daughter of Chiron and Chariklo.
Right. Right.
She's actually almost just a super asteroid because she comes within the orbit of Saturn towards Jupiter. And so she's the bridger of the bridgers, even.
The bridge of the bridges. Wow. A bridge's bridge. That's very cool. Because the main ones that we sort of have heard of most of, although they keep discovering more, and maybe 20 or so have been named, but Chiron is the wounding, the wounded healer, the initiator, and things like that. And there's meaning in the wound. And then Pholus, which is the second one to be discovered in 1992, I believe, um, is related to chain reactions and our ancestral releases as part of the healing process that the centaurs provide us. Chariklo is containment, has a nice round orbit, unlike the other centaurs, and containing sacred space. Spinning grace, I think, is the translation from the Greek, right? And then Nessus, of course, the bad boy of the centaurs, the baddest boy. There are several ones, but this is the most feared of the group, and it represents such themes as toxin and murder and betrayal and poison and some pretty scary subjects. So how is it? I know that this is perhaps not the direction that you usually go in, but this aspect of the centaurs being challenging and sort of disruptors of coherence, how does that fit in? How can people be open and excited about learning about the centaurs if they present this kind of your wound, your shadow, the toxin within? Like a lot of people just want to say, no thanks.
Sure.
I want to watch Netflix and eat pizza.
Right. You don't always want to study your wound and chart its course throughout your life, but there's some comfort in knowing that there is some unique understanding about your own story that comes through the symbolism of the planets in a way that's completely whole and comprehensive and with nothing left out. And, as you yourself catalog in your chapter contribution to our book, Being Chiron, we can really get some sort of, well, a light to shine on our own, the pain that we come in with and the karmic story that we're working with. I think that is a part of where we also find common nexus, is that the purpose of this life being to work out some story, some, whether it's from the past or it's what our lot in this life is to work on, that it's conducive to have a planet that's bridging the more transpersonal planets that could have to do with maybe the the pain that is beyond the individual, right? And we are so aware of that with our broadening understanding of global events all the time. We can always tune into that level of the pain body of the world. But as that sort of little piece of it gets placed into one individual, then wouldn't you want some kind of guide to work through that story? And so it's sort of convenient in a intense way that there's a way of measuring that out as it progresses through a lifetime. So
So it's a real gift in a way. S Coming to us just at the right time, probably. There is a certain perfection in the timing, the astronomical clocks, and so on. So do you feel that maybe we're entering a centauric era of awareness and bridging the polarities and
yeah, I
kind of
sure do. It's one of those realities that's you can choose to work with or not. I don't think it's like kind of they had that idea back in certain circles within 2012 that instantly the consciousness will be raised and everyone will be magically enlightened. But this allows the interoperability to increase that when we choose to welcome in or I think Melanie Reinhardt calls it coming online of these beings into our lives that we can choose to. And so for me in my work, I more have the rose-colored glasses of looking at kind of the finest, best experiences humans have had and noticing that end of things. Maybe that's just for my own pep talk from the universe, always to show that good things are possible in this kind of often dark world, right?
So, so you mentioned Okirawe, the daughter of Chiron and his wife, consort, Chariklo, and having some prophetic abilities, I believe,
Right.
in Greek mythology, and therefore we take that into our understanding of the archetype. So, and you also mentioned that Okiro being a little bit more towards the inner solar system is a sort of bridge between the other centaurs and the Jupiter, Mars, the asteroids, and so on. So what is it about Okiro that catches your fancy and
Well,
charms you?
my favorite topic of conversation. We can open with the, as you mentioned, the harmony of the spheres that
Yeah.
Okurowi operating at just above 24 years per cycle, that she fits between Jupiter and obviously within the bound of Saturn, but fitting, Saturn being not an even multiple, that we get 12, 25-ish to from Jupiter, two Jupiters to one Okiroi, and then two Okirois to one Chiron. So that continues that out. But if we use Jupiter as the multiplier of 12 years, and this gets kind of mathy all of a sudden, but if we just add 12, then we get actually, of course, we add from the Chiron to Cariclo, that's about the distance between their 49-ish to 63-ish year orbits. So she's just the twice Jupiter of that. So she brings it back down to the smaller gears of the machine, and but so that's all one way of looking at things. Okiroi got my attention though because in the very early days of my choosing astrology as a lens, that she was simply very prominent in the personal development story that I was going through. And so I actually had no idea really about the centaurs specifically, other than I knew about Chiron. It was just that I I threw the whole gamut of signifiers I could at one event just to see what stuck. And Okiroi was one that was most obvious. And it actually took me years before I really understood the depth of that archetype of Okiroi, and how that played out in my own unfoldment. I am by no means an oracle at all. I do not channel in the sense of bringing words or information through. I do have some kind of energetic sensitivity to the planets and to
Yes.
maybe healing energies in general, which I work with in various forms. But uh, the presence of Okiroi in a life cycle moment can open us beyond the veil in some way, I think.
Okay. Mm, great.
Yeah.
Well, we have lots of veils, so if there is a medicine, a remedy, or a medicine to help us go through the veil, great. Just to make it easier, take some of the burden off, take over some of our effort, because often we effort to do that consciously or unconsciously, and sometimes in dysfunctional ways. So if Okiroi can come along and ease our struggle in being able to see more clearly, more deeply.
Sure.
Well, David, this has been really wonderful. Could go on for hours, but just before we wind down, there are a couple of things. One is you mentioned the book, which has just finally been published,
That's right.
Sideways from Saturn. And so I'd like you to speak just a little bit about that and also what services you provide so that people who may be interested in, what you have mentioned and your person, they can follow up with you.
Sure. So yeah, our book was the fruit of many years of labor, and we hatched this idea just after the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of late 2020, and now through the arduous last year of the square between these planets, we have given birth to this shared creation, and the book being sideways from Saturn, which is a nod to their placement in this realm beyond the bounds of Saturn. And we have Melanie Reinhardt, who is, as Hugh calls her, the Centauress Mentoress, an apt descriptor of Melanie. And in some ways, most of us are colleagues or even students of Melanie in this book. That sort of defined the group in some sense. And that allows us the common ground of referring back to her works, which are in many ways seminal to working with the centaurs. She's not the only one, of course. Saint Stein, whose work is referenced many times, and others. But this sort of the energy of this book may be manifested in a love for Chariklo as the counterpart to Chiron as well. That there's that the healing feminine essence of Chariklo being so important to return to the story. And so, yes, we have 10 plus chapters about that, including all of the centaurs we've mentioned today and a couple more, such as Asbolus.
Yes.
And so that was a lot of effort that I'm now very pleased to say you can go on our site, which will be in the links underneath this, and order it from Priceapay Press. And just as an aside, Priceapay is the name of the constellation that Chariklo herself was discovered against in the sky. So that's that's the archetype of the manger.
Yes.
So
Yes.
kind of a resonance there that was the discovery place. And then for myself, well, I work with these centaurs in a variety of domains, astrological, and we could say magical, although that may or may not align with your understanding of that word, but at the idea of working with these planets as conscious, helpful
Yes.
influences, we are able to bring those energies into tangible receptacles or symbolic vessels for working with these. And, for me, it's the more reliable that those who choose to work with this have very good results doing so. No one has to work with magic or energy to understand astrology, but the way of calling in when you require aid can be helped by working with
Yes.
the conscious side of the planets. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of alchemy. And, the magician has certain tools, whether it's words, magical words, or rituals, or understanding. And also thinking of a herbalist, for example, or having these tools or remedies of the centaurs, which have come into our consciousness. We have them available, and a growing body of scholarship and understanding and experience. That is, we have this ability to combine them, use one at a time, or sometimes mix them together as we do with herbs, healing herbs. It's so exciting. So you also offer readings, astrological readings, correct?
Sure, yes, with an emphasis on building up the story from the traditional chart and then is finding solutions with the centaurs as seeing where those are bridging in your own life and unfold it. Yeah.
You don't have a copy of the book handy, do you, just to show people?
I do. I have to loudly unfold it right here, but I've got it wrapped up for someone. The book,
There it
Sideways to
is.
Saturn. Thanks, Hugh.
It's a beautiful cover, really. It's very simpatico, the depiction of Chiron, very playful.
Yes. This is by a wonderful young artist called Ian Harriott.
Okay.
And I was just flipping through a picture book of zodiac signs, and it struck my eye
Got your eye, yeah.
the weave of that,
That's
which
really
is actually
fun.
his
And
beard around the bow.
all right, the arrow down between the legs.
Yeah.
That's great. And then the orbits, those round ones in the middle, those are the planets, the inner planets, right, which are
Yeah.
pretty round around the sun.
Yeah, and this
And
is
then,
not to scale, of course, but yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah, it's just symbolic, I guess. But then you see out farther, you have the elliptical orbits of the centaurs crossing over the orbits of some of like Saturn, and Uranus, Neptune. It's a great cover.
Thank you.
So I'll put the links below, and our video will be up on top, and I'll put a little description of the conversation. and then some links to the Centaur Space is the name of your website, the main one, right?
That's right.
The Centaur Space and how to buy the book.
Thanks, you. It's
Oh,
been great playing in the Centaur space together. Thanks.
I know it's really been fun, and I just appreciate so much your wisdom and your openness and the way that your mind is able to absorb and then share out almost simultaneously.
Thanks. That means a lot to me, Hugh. Right back at you.
Right.
Thanks.
Maybe,
All right.
maybe,
Be well.
maybe we'll meet again and talk about AI or something like that in the
Sure.
future. Huh?
Many things to discuss.
Centaurs and AI, there's a nice combination.
It's true.
So bye y'all. Enjoy.